all good evening to you and welcome to Southside City live during lockdown. This evening we have with us Mr. Edie Stewart, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association, Mr. Marcus Bruce, President of the Point Fortin Youth Council, and I must say we are expecting any time now the President of the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Council. Gentlemen, all good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Pleasant good evening to you.
Listen, how life has been so far during this lockdown?
It's been busy on my end.
It's been extremely busy on my
I hope
end
it has
as well.
been well for you.
Yes. Well, let me take the opportunity to thank you and your hardworking colleagues who have been in the front line in this pandemic as they put their lives and their family at risk battling this deadly virus, Mr. Stewart.
Yes. It's greatly appreciated.
How are Mr. Stewart, tell me, how are your colleagues doing?
It's a mixed bag, as you would imagine. It has been quite a task over these last months, a year and plus now, since we have been in this phase. There was some periods where there was a little lull, but from the start of this year, it has been really hectic for nursing and midwifery personnel. So it has really placed a great strain on them. So the association is trying to reach out in a number of quarters to try to alleviate some of their challenges that they would be facing at this time. And we really have to thank the private sector who really has come on board to assist the association in different ways to take care of the shortfall that they are experiencing in a number of areas. So it has been a mixed bag, and we hope we reached a point where vaccination really is rolled out comprehensively throughout Trinidad and Tobago. We encourage persons to be vaccinated so we could come out of this lockdown and come out of this period of uncertainty where a lot of our loved ones are have to be admitted in our nation's hospitals that are currently overcrowded right now. So we really support the vaccination drive, yeah?
So tell me, what has been some of the biggest challenges for frontline workers, especially nurses?
Some of the biggest challenges, well, I could probably just start with what transpired only this weekend with the recent announcement of a further extension of the curfew. So curfew is going to start at 7 p.m. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So something simple as that has placed nursing and midwifery personnel at an additional challenge at this point in time, as you would imagine. Generally, the shifts normally run from 7 to 3 p.m., 7 a.m. in the morning to 3 p.m., then 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and then from 8 to 8. So generally that is the normal shift nursing personnel work. With the changing of shift last month with the curfew, the shifts were brought on from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And now with this change in the curfew, that has lent itself to an additional challenge where now nursing personnel will be going home and coming to work during the curfew hours. That means you basically have to hire someone to bring you and drop you from work because there's no taxi service, no maxis, no public transport during those hours. So that in itself is a challenge that we have been facing, in addition to the many other challenges. But I see you have a guest on, so I'll allow you to introduce.
Let me welcome Mr. John, the President of the Trinidad and Tobago Council. Mr. John, welcome to Southside News City and our program Live During Lockdown.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I mean, it's my pleasure to be here. And well, sorry, one, for my tardiness. I mean, I just got in from work, but I'm happy to be here, and also was able to get some of the discussions that we are talking, COVID-19. I mean, it's a very challenging time. I mean, by my haircut, you can tell that some of the things have been cut off. I haven't been able to get to the barber in a while, but I'm happy to be here, and especially as we talk throughout the evening, getting into how young people have been feeling and what has been happening in this space as it relates to COVID.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bruce, how your organization has been dealing with this pandemic lockdown in and around in your district?
In Point Fortin, the young people, the organization in itself has been fairly thriving. We had several initiatives occurring. The start of the year up until presently. So presently we're coping as good as that can be with the circumstances occurring.
What did the Point Fortin Youth Organization reach out any hamper drive to assist the people of Point Fortin and environs as a youth council?
Approximately 2 weeks ago, we would have started our hamper distribution. It's an ongoing thing. As stuff comes in, it goes out. And to fill the space, we had began planting your own food, so growing your own food initiative. As well as we have some on-stream, we call it meal kitchen because it varies between soup, pilau, provision. So we would have that as well introduced within our welfare system.
Okay. So let me turn to Mr. John. Mr. John, tell me something. What are some of the major issues facing young people during this lockdown?
I mean, ideally, I have the first thing, Cape and CSEC, in terms of the very tender topics of young people and what they are facing. I mean, last year, after the first lockdown, we had to do exams in multiple choice examination, and plans for doing these exams, their full exams. But now you have students in the next month or so, they have to brace exams and go out to do the exams. But there is a lot of speculation that the COVID-19 pandemic would not necessarily be eased, and there are a lot of young people that would be affected and have to go out. So that is one of the major challenges, and also the question of productivity as it relates to the household, and also connectivity. So the Trinidad Council covers areas like Nariva, May, Arrow, and also rural areas. You're talking about touching the North Coast areas as well. We have youth groups a part of the council. And a lot of the things that have posed a challenge is digital connectivity, in terms that the Minister of Education has cited that over 64,000 young people in Trinidad and Tobago have been affected because they have lack of access to devices. So that is one of the things. And the other thing is that the vaccination, as it relates to if young people can really take the vaccine, and then there is the talk about persons under 18 not being able to access the vaccination. So there are a lot of issues around young people, but most definitely to pinpoint uncertainty with exams and in terms of connectivity and access to devices and also Wi-Fi.
Mr. Stewart, I will take it to you, Mr. Stewart. Tell me, Mr. Stewart, the mental health of nurses has to be 100% for them for best care practice. What are the strategies of the RNA adopting to maintain and to ensure that the better nursing patient care environment? Better nursing environment.
I hope I got your question. It was a little muffled. but I'll still attempt it. Well, the
Okay, let me
association,
go over it. It is,
sure.
okay, the mental health of nurses has to be 100% for them, to be for best care. My question is, what is the strategy of the TTRNA is adopting to maintain and even ensure that a better nursing patient for a better nursing patient environment?
Okay. Um, the association has been on a drive even prior to COVID-19 to lay the foundation for a comprehensive, well-run, efficient healthcare system in Trinidad and Tobago. We see the environment not really being conducive to proper nursing care, and then that will also lead to poor quality of care for the patients. So even prior to COVID-19, we have been lobbying the government, agitating, trying to improve the standards of healthcare within Trinidad and Tobago. We have been successful in a number of areas, and we are still working on a number of other areas. So it's an ongoing drive. Currently, during the COVID period, we're just trying to provide meals sometimes to nursing personnel, where nursing personnel are required to work 12 hours and more sometimes, and in an environment where you can't purchase meals anymore. It really is difficult for nursing personnel to have to work 12-hour shifts and then be expected to go home and still try to prepare meals and then come back to work the next morning. So simple things we are trying to do right now just to ease the burden: transportation, meals, just getting the ability to have the government bring the nursing salary up to date. And I'm not speaking about an increase in salary, but just the mere fact that nursing salaries, like all persons within the regional health authorities, are not at their correct incremental point. That's an issue. There are other major issues in terms of we have nursing personnel who are part of this pandemic fight, and they are temporarily employed. They are working on 1 month, 3 months, 6 months contract. So even that is a very onerous mindset to have the nursing personnel in, thinking that after this whole pandemic is over and the RHAs have no more use for them, they will be let go. So there are a number of issues we are trying to resolve on an ongoing basis at the association. Yeah.
Mr. Stewart, I can tell you we are getting some questions, and one person wants to find out. I hope you're hearing me now. One person wants to find out what is the state of the Nurses Council and how nurses get registered with the Nursing Council.
Well, the council sadly is in a state where it is not conducive to be functioning properly. The council is the regulatory body for nursing and midwifery personnel, all nursing and midwifery personnel. The council sadly has not been operating at its proper strength. It's supposed to be 9 elected persons, 6 appointed persons, and 1 chief nursing officer. There have been no elections of the council in almost 2 years. So the council really doesn't have the moral to really carry out some of its functions it's currently doing, being run by only appointees. And if we always comment that, picture Trinidad and Tobago operating with only appointees by the president and no elected person being elected to our country, and out of those appointees you pick who's the prime minister. So that is exactly what is going on with the Nursing Council of Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately. But they continue to do what they believe is in the best interest. So I do believe persons still could be registered at this point in time. the legality of it could be questioned, seeing that it is not properly constituted as we speak. It's just running with a bare quorum. So that is something for the lawyers to treat with really. But persons can register as we speak to the nurse, to become a nurse.
Let me take this. This question is to Mr. Bruce. Mr. Bruce, one of the objectives of the Youth Council is to sensitize young people in the Point Fortin area on the issues and impact on them. How the council is doing at this time with that? Mr. Bruce, we are not hearing you. I believe your mic is mute. You are mute your mic, Mr.
Yes, sorry about that. Presently, the issue surrounding young people in Point Fortin is just like around the world, around the country, is the COVID-19 pandemic. And presently, in the best way we decide is to address the issue is to give a level of comfort or a level of activity to do during the period. So we would have recently launched a program in collaboration with an institute to give out free courses for those who I need something to pass the time. So we would have done that initially. We would have also engaged in education series, a 6-week series actually, where we teach different topics. We had storytelling, we had discussions of different books. We noticed that engagement maybe virtually is better for the mind or better for the individual, that instead of focusing on the pandemic itself. We don't like to say it's a diversion. However, it's something to keep the mind at ease and the mind at rest to a point where it's comfortable to operate.
Okay, Mr. John, let me just ask one to you, Mr. John. Can you tell me, do you think too many young people are being irresponsible and not taking this pandemic seriously? How can we help them change their behavior?
In terms of the first question, if young people are being irresponsible, I mean, when you look at the age youth is 10 to 35. I mean, you do have young adults. I mean, from 25 probably to 35, being on the roads. I mean, when you look at places like Charlotte Street and also in the supermarkets, you have a lot of that age bracket not wearing the mask as they should. I think what is the challenge is that although every day we have so much of cases and every day we are having scores of deaths throughout the weeks and stuff, one of the challenges is that some persons have not taken the pandemic as serious, and that caused us to be in favor of the rise in cases. But one of the things I think in terms of sensitizing citizens, in terms of improving their behavior, I think the means of communication through the ministry while they post out and they say we're mass sensitized and stuff like that, I think what has been projected and we have seen a different reaction last week when the AG was on the Twitter um, live and the Twitter space, and he spoke to the projections for Carnival 2022. I mean, ideally, in terms of the change in communication, that should be how we can change behavior. Because if persons are anticipating something good is coming, I think that will change the way that they act and they would now act more responsibly. So I think that is the best way in terms of what are we going to expect in the very near future, and it would allow persons to sanitize and also wear your mask how you're supposed to wear it. Instead of just saying sanitize, but now sanitize so that we can have X, Y, and Z, and in this case, Carnival.
Mr. Stewart, let me just go back to you, Mr. Stewart, because you know this is live during lockdown. And nursing integral part. Tell me, while deaths are, Mr. Stewart, while deaths are part of life, the number of dead we are hearing among on a daily basis as a result of the COVID-19 is staggering for us. the man on the street. But how the nurses are coping with it, how your colleagues are coping with these amount of deaths on a daily basis. Your mic, Mr. Stewart, you
Yes.
have.
The strange thing about it is that, unfortunately, the majority of persons of nursing personnel who would have been placed on the forefront of this battle in the Couva Medical Facility in Quora, at Arima, the main hub for COVID response were actually very young nursing personnel. They were new to the profession. Actually, the majority of them, it was some of them the first day they were placed in this environment last year when they were hired. So it was a rude awakening for a number of them. A few of them actually left the profession during that point. A few of them migrated, but a large segment of them stuck it out, and we really must commend them. The RHA in particular thought it best to use all basically junior nursing personnel at this time and keep the senior nursing personnel within the general institutions to continue care. So a large segment of the probably 90+% of the parallel healthcare system was manned by junior nursing personnel, even within our ICUs and HDUs, until the other RHAs had to forward assistance to them by sending some of the more senior experienced nursing personnel. So that would have really impacted definitely on young nurses' mindset. We would have had calls from our members indicating that they were experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome, they were experiencing anxiety, insomnia, a number of mental health issues. So because it's not something that you learn in school, it's something that you really experience when you come out on the field of work as a nursing personnel. You see that is not unusual to the nurse, but it would definitely impact on any novice nurse coming into the profession. And it's something that we hope they would have managed it properly, because if you don't manage it properly, it could affect your personal life. Seeing that so regularly on a daily basis, it could make you disassociate your feelings. That is a measure that persons have taken generally to death, because if you are seeing that so much, you really try to avoid getting so personal with the patient. And unfortunately, with this whole COVID virus, where you are not allowed as a patient to interact with your family members on that personal level, you may do it just through a phone call or whatnot, but you are not being able to touch your family members. No visitors are allowed. It really comes down to the nursing personnel and some of the other medical staff to really lend that type of support. So when that nurse gives that support and then they lose that person, especially a young person, it really impacts them severely. So we are seeing a number of them dealing with some mental health issues, and we hope they come out on the right side after this battle has been fought.
Mr. Stewart, I want to keep you right there, Mr. Stewart. Tell me, how did the nursing fraternity feel about the recent decision to make the Point Fortin Hospital a COVID facility? Do you think that they left the southwestern part of the island at risk, since there is no accident emergency or primary healthcare facility, or are we being too narrow-minded in our view about this decision?
Well, I believe, well, first begin, the association wasn't consulted with that move. It was a decision taken very rapidly following the spilling over of persons waiting to be admitted at San Fernando General Hospital Accident and Emergency Department, you had in excess of 40 to 50 people waiting to be admitted into the parallel healthcare system. Sadly, the government don't normally mention how many persons are waiting admission into the parallel healthcare system. So the public generally does not know the volume of persons in excess on any given day, in excess of 100, 150 persons waiting to be admitted into the parallel healthcare system. So much so, all the remaining regions, Eastern Regional Health Authority, Southwest Regional Health Authority, and Northwest Regional Health Authority had to develop their own parallel healthcare systems within their general setting, because NCRHA wasn't admitting their patients, despite saying that they were reducing in bed numbers, what have you. So the Southwest Regional Health Authority took that decision to convert Point Fortin Hospital, because their rationale was that, look, it's being currently underutilized at the moment. They had already converted the area hospital into a COVID unit that was filled up. So the next move was to convert the Point Fortin Hospital, which was really at a small capacity at the present time. I think it could hold 100 beds, and less than 10% was being utilized. So they thought it in their wisdom to convert it. However, they did not see that Point Fortin would still require that accident and emergency facility. And subsequently, I understand they have converted the Point Fortin clinic into a 24-hour setup system. So that should treat with the emergency issues, and then all other cases would be transferred to San Fernando. A little more consultation, but I guess they probably did not have the time. It probably hit them suddenly. I'm not sure how it could have hit them suddenly, because we were speaking about this issue repeatedly, that we were seeing so many persons waiting on trolleys, on wheelchairs, on benches outside of all our nation's A&Es, waiting to get admitted into the parallel healthcare system. We had already indicated that the parallel healthcare system was already outstripped for weeks now, and sadly it came to that rush decision. Yeah.
I have someone here sending some questions to me, and I'm getting the feeling that it's a nurse. There is no mental health. There is no health without mental health. How you can respond to that?
Well, correct, definitely, and it has been an area where Trinidad and Tobago has not focused on by any stretch of the imagination. We have never really focused on mental health as a real topic within Trinidad and Tobago. We see mental health or mental illness as taboo, and we have never really focused on that, sadly. And we have left, and to be honest, a number of our problems as a society really stems from mental illness issues within our society. Some of the crimes we see is really has its root causes in mental illness. We see it. I myself, coming from a mental health background, I'm a psychiatric nurse by training, one of my first early days as a nurse, and I would see effects of alcohol abuse, of marijuana abuse, of a number of these precursors that have led to mental illness, and which, if not addressed comprehensively, leads to mental illness going forward. So we have seen that, and despite the government making that declaration about 2-3 years ago that we're going to focus on mental health, and we really have not seen that emphasis on mental health at the present time. We see mental health as institutionalized care. but really mental health is for all of us, and it should be practiced in every single health facility throughout Trinidad and Tobago. But sadly, it is not so. Just as general health is not really practiced, if one goes to any healthcare facility in Trinidad and Tobago, any public facility in Trinidad and Tobago, to be just evaluated to see if their biomarkers are within the required range, you will be turned away, because our health centers don't treat you when you are healthy. It waits for you to get ill before they really treat you. And that has always been a bone of contention for the association, and we are pushing the stakeholders in the direction which WHO has recommended all countries throughout the world to really treat with health, mental health, and general health. Yeah.
Mr. Stewart, let me ask you, Mr. John, let me ask you this question. Has your Trinidad and Tobago Youth Council has put anything in place to deal with the mental health of young people?
I think most definitely we would have had discussions on dealing with mental health. I mean, ideally last year in 2019, before this new council, we would have had sessions during the start of the pandemic to deal with how you do activities and how to engage during this time and have balance in terms of maintaining school practice and also a daily lifestyle. Definitely, we have actually one of our youth organization, the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Advocacy Network, has launched a campaign this month, actually Mental Health Awareness Month. So they have launched a campaign in terms of bringing awareness to how you can also, one, protect yourself in terms of, maintaining that sort of mental awareness and also keeping sane in this time. And the council is looking forward to also keeping engaging in that discussion. What we have also established is checking in on one another. I mean, in this time, sometimes we take for granted that someone is good, but most definitely our network of youth organizations, over 75 youth organizations attached to the council, we have ensured that we stay connected through the virtual platforms, of course, and just ensuring that we be our neighbor's keeper in this very daunting time.
Mr. Brown, what about your organization, the Point Fortin Youth Council?
Likewise, at any other, we would have engaged in seminars on mental health, as well as unofficially, in regards to receiving messages for people requesting help, we have psychologists and counselors on standby who are willing and ready to assist anyone that needs the assistance. Myself, being trained as a counselor for child and adolescents, I would have extended anything needed to parents, especially during this time in regards to the younger ones, because we oftentimes forget the younger ones are also affected by this pandemic, not being able to go to school and play with their friends, and some of them may not even understand why they are unable to do so. So we would have put together this small network within Point Fortin for those that require the assistance at a moment's notice. And if it's something that we are unable to facilitate, we direct to the already available channels, available the various 800 numbers. At the point in time when the mental health clinic was available in Point Fortin on a Thursday, we would have advised those as such. So that's pretty much what we're doing and trying to continue doing.
Mr. Scott, let me take it back to you. I know we spoke earlier on. Can you tell me what are the percentage of nurses have taken their jobs?
Actually, I just came out of a meeting dealing with that today, and it varies, but the numbers are increasing as we speak. So some regions are close to 50%, some a little less, so it varies. We were trying to get a handle of how many nursing and military personnel have already gotten their jobs. But like the rest of the country, You were hearing that hesitancy, but now I believe because we are seeing such a remarkable death rate, one of the highest in the world, I might add, I think persons are seeing the importance of being vaccinated. So if there's anything positive to come out of the month of May, is that it really has influenced a number of persons to accept vaccination and for us to return some semblance of normalcy soon. Yeah.
So let me continue along this line, Mr. Stewart. Do you think that this pandemic has exposed any weaknesses in our healthcare system? What are your recommendations, if any, regarding so what can be done to make an improvement in our health system?
All right. So how could we improve our sickness care system, as we call it, as I like to call it, because as I say, we don't focus on health in our healthcare system. We focus on how best we could treat you when you are sick. So that is how our system is structured. So the first thing we would need to do is restructure our system, reformat it, realign it to what WHO has recommended to focus on primary health care. One would realize that Trinidad and Tobago have the most secondary healthcare facilities per million of our population than anywhere else in the world. Of course, that is where we focus. We focus on secondary care. When we see a hospital being built, in our eyes, in the population eyes, we believe that is healthcare, not realizing that is just kicking the can down the road. So we really need to ramp up our primary healthcare facilities. And this pandemic really has demonstrated that we have a large population of unhealthy persons with comorbid illnesses. And this has led to our high death rate. When one watches the top causes of deaths within Trinidad and Tobago, in fact, in the world, one will be shocked to realize that Trinidad tops the world in 3 of those areas, tops the world in terms of death rates. We top the world in prostate cancer. We top the world in diabetes. We top the world in a number of other areas, well, besides violence. So this is really alarming, and this is where we need to place our emphasis. We need to place our resources, human resources and financial resources, to bring down the large amount of diseases, that non-communicable diseases that plague our population, Trinidad and Tobago. If we had a lower disease rate in Trinidad and Tobago, our rates would look much more better. If one looks at Cuba, who has a higher incidence of COVID within their country, almost twice the amount of cases we have in Trinidad and Tobago, yet they have a lower death rate than Trinidad and Tobago, and because they have always focused heavily on primary health care. So that is, if nothing else, we take away from COVID-19, this experience, this pandemic experience, we would want the country to focus on primary health care. We want persons to be monitored throughout their life cycle, from birth to death. It should not be from 0 to 5. You are required to carry your child to the health center to be vaccinated, and then after 5 years, we forget about you. You are fully vaccinated, and that's the end of that. No, we want that to continue. Even if it's on every year or every other year or every 3 years, that you are assigned to that same health center and you go for a yearly checkup. You check for men of a certain age, you check your prostate, you check your stomach ulcer to be, all of these things. We want these things, true healthcare. So we would not have to be relying on secondary healthcare facilities to treat you. Prevention is always better than the cure. So we would really want the government to focus on that. If one watches our life expectancy in Trinidad and Tobago, it is one of the lowest. Sad to say, men in Trinidad and Tobago are expected to live 69 years. That is the life expectancy for men in Trinidad and Tobago. For women, it's 75 years. And the majority of persons don't even reach those ages. And that is the upper limit. That is the average. And when you watch some of the developed countries who focus on primary health care, their life expectancies are upwards of the high 70s and into the 80s. So that is where we really would want to push. We are dying as a nation. Our elderly are dying needlessly, unnecessarily. We are seeing persons retiring at age 60, and by 62 they are dead. So we really would want to focus on primary health care. If nothing else we take away from COVID-19, you should take away that we have not been running a healthcare. We have been running sickness care in Trinidad and Tobago, which really needs to be addressed. There are many others, but I can always come back after.
Not a problem. Let me ask Mr. John. Mr. John, for young people, social media, the main form of communication, more so now, only to keep in contact with friends. How do you think social media is impacting on young people at this time?
I think the thing about it is that social media, while yes, is one of the major things, and it has moved the way that communication works within the 21st century. I think one of the most important things, my brother in youth, Mr. Bruce, would have spoken to, ensuring that we keep in line in communication, especially in COVID-19, as it relates to mental health. We were discussing that before. But social media now, more than ever, in terms of young entrepreneurs within these times of COVID-19, and I have to pinpoint it again in terms of youth is 10 to 35. So you have that bracket of young people that are starting businesses online, and they're using it as their mainstream of having their stores online and their mainstream of advertising. That is something that's very big now. Zoom is considered also a social media platform, as it is used for a major way of communication. That ideally is not only for communication and keeping contact with friends, but is also a space in where we are able to voice our concerns and our opinions. And also, in terms of social media and young people, as it relates to the Trinidad Youth Council, is also an opportunity to have our voices be heard and comment on day-to-day activities and also national issues. Mr. Stewart spoke to ideally, flattening the curve, and also prevention is better than cure. As it relates to young people, the reality is that one of the major things that are affecting us as youth now is that you have this high rate of young people involved in crime. And as when Mr. Stewart spoke to prevention is better than cure to the health sector, when you look at it in terms of the youth sector, and we speak to vocational skills and trade skills and why our education is failing us, social media, just to bring back in the point, social media now is an opportunity for young people to voice their concern, because it is becoming more and more the mainstream of communication, and moving away from the newspaper, and definitely also the radio, because this live here, I know we are getting comments from Facebook and stuff like that. This is also a way and a means by which that we can start communicating, and that is also the social media that we speak to. So I think, yes, we use it for communication methods, but most definitely during this pandemic, it has been used for much more than just communicating with friends.
Let me go. What is the youth council doing to assist? What is the youth council doing to assist young people who are experiencing challenges at this time? For example, depression, suicide thoughts, anger, frustration, or feeling a sense of hopelessness. Any one of you, Mr. Blue or Mr. John, your youth council.
My mic is on. So ideally, I think one of the major things that the Youth Council, our memberships, I mean, we lean on our ministries in terms of social development as well as youth and development, and we are that voice to voice our concerns to these line ministries with said responsibility to assist us in these. I mean, on my learned colleague, Mr. Bruce, who has training in social skills as well as mentoring and counseling. I don't, but what we usually do is once we have young people that need assistance, we are that bridge to ensure that they get the assistance that they need. And the council have been doing that. I mean, ideally, one of the things it speaks to is also networking, because some of the things is that we do lives like this, um, and we have discussions. But what I would say though, in terms of that question, I think it's something that while I know that we have been doing and we have been assisting a few persons, definitely from the person that would have sent that comment, is something that the Youth Council can look into, understanding that I am, just started in my term, and it's something that I would definitely look to do more in terms of assisting young people as it relates to mental health and the issues that they would have cited in the question.
Okay, let me just
Um,
ask, what are some of the, I know you went there, Mr. Bruce, let me ask you, what are some of the challenges that some of the young people in the community where you come from is facing during this lockdown measure?
One of the most major challenges we've identified thus far is education. The accessibility, as Mr. John would have indicated prior, the online services, we would have noted that a lot of our students still rely on the package system. Um, Instead of doing classes virtually. So we realized that would have been a major issue, especially for the primary school setting. We've noticed that that's a major, and as we graduate to the secondary school level, we notice that majority of the individuals is connectivity. They may have the devices but no connectivity, or if they do have connectivity, it's based on a data plan that is limited and can only do so much. One, two, as as it may sound, interaction, because as much as the virtual space is the quote unquote new normal, Trinidadians and human beings on a whole rely on communication, touch, face to face interaction. And we've noticed and understand, yes, it is a pandemic. However, that way of life, asking an individual just 2019, actually January, February of 2020, where we're able to touch someone, give a high five, a bounce, for it to dramatically change to no, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a social change that certain people, certain young people, I might say, or not even some young people, people on a whole, has a serious complication in adjusting to. So what we've identified is what we're working with. So in regards to the first point that I made, we've been trying to work with other stakeholders within the borough, within the constituency, to get these people online or even have access to the packages until they could come online. And regards to the social aspect of it, try to push more online stuff. This is an also example. Twitter Spaces has become the trend thus far. We're trying to push online games. I realize that's a thing now where you join a Zoom and you have an online game. So these are little things that we're doing within our little space to just help. Again, it's not the cure all, but it will assist in what we're going through.
Mr. Stewart, let me just come back to you. Do you think that the nurses are properly remunerated for the long hours at work for over a year now?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And this is the reason why a number of them are feeling a little disenchanted, because while there has been no additional remuneration during this pandemic, whether and nurses would have been seeing a number of their colleagues internationally and regionally being paid a hazard allowance during this period and time. Unfortunately, the government of Trinidad and Tobago did not see it fit to offer nursing personnel working with in these high-risk environments similar hazard pay allowance. This is standard throughout the world. In most countries, developed and non-developed countries, they are doing this, paying workers hazard allowance. But as I said, the government didn't see it fit. Additionally, nursing personnel have incurred added costs. So, as I was speaking about earlier, with this curfew, there's no public transport. So, for the average nurse who doesn't have a vehicle, they really have to hire persons to bring them to work and pick them up after, especially for the night shift. Going into the night shift, there you have to hire a car. We have nurses coming from all corners of Trinidad and Tobago to the centralized area, whether it's San Fernando, Port of Spain, Grandy, from all parts of the country. We have some nurses coming from Mayaro working in St. Anne's Hospital. How is that person going to get home and to and from? That person has to hire a vehicle. And one could only imagine the cost, that added cost that nurse would face. And seeing that, unlike again in other parts of the world, you would have nursing quarters, nursing hostels. We used to have that in Trinidad and Tobago. Sadly, that has been removed from nursing personnel. So nurses no longer have nursing quarters within the hospital. So it's not that you could remain overnight. So it really has placed an added burden, and not to mention, once again, generally more progressive countries have daycare facilities within hospitals. That is the trend now throughout the entire world, not only in hospitals, but majority of professional organizations. So if you go around Savannah, you have that building, I wouldn't call the name of that energy company, but they have a daycare facility inside there. Even the Ministry of Labor has a daycare facility within on one of their floors, because they see the importance of especially for nursing personnel who work 24-hour shifts. They work constantly on a 24/7 basis. The difficulty in finding babysitter daycare facilities, you would want that right in the facility. So they have to hire persons. So it's right across. Their cost has increased. However, there has been no added remuneration. So it's really a difficult time for personnel, and that is the reason why they are migrating now. So that's another challenge we are facing.
I hear you talk about coming to work, going back home. Have you, in your capacity as the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association, held any discussion with any one of these RHA re-shuttle service for their nurses? He has just gone offline there for a while, and I hope he heard what the question was and he could probably take it. But in the meantime, let's talk with the youth council who is here. Do you think our society is still ashamed of saying that we are not willing, and as a result, to seek help? Mr. John, the young people are not willing.
Are not willing? I think I'm losing.
No, what I'm saying is that do you think, as a society, we are ashamed to say we are not doing well, and are so far resulting in not seeking help?
I mean, the question to be one is that who we are seeking help from. I mean, that's a very broad question in terms of ideally, seeking help. And one of the things is that, across the world, most countries are facing financial challenges. And in terms of seeking help, I mean, ideally, one of the things and the answer that I can lean on is going to the IMF for funding to help our country in these economic times. But one of the things that as a society we must know is that when we lean on these World Banks to assist us. The country is put in a predicament, and they can hold us at ransom and have us do certain things that may not be in the best interest of our population, and sometimes that runs the risk of us um, going into issues and situations that we don't want to get into, as in seeking help. Yes, as a society, celebrating 60 years next year, 2022, I think we could have done a bit better, given that before my time, we had opportunities of maximizing productivity. But most definitely, as a nation, we have come a long way in terms of the development. And I think now, in this time, because we are in a particular situation of a downturn of our economy and definitely a worldwide pandemic, we mustn't necessarily shy and say that Trinidad and Tobago is in dire need of help, but most definitely the situation that we can look forward to getting through and getting through it. And you know, that is my point of view. I mean, it's a very sticky situation, but it's more something that as a nation we can work together to get things working better. And of course, it requires, most importantly, our leaders to make responsible decisions. And I think sometimes that is easily foregone at some points and some stages during challenging times.
Mr. Stewart, you left us for a short while, and my question to you was: did you, in your capacity as the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nursing Association, help talk with any one of these RHA re a shuttle service for their nurses during this pandemic period?
Yes, we actually in talks with a private car rental company, where we have reached out to them and we are working on some shuttle services, because we do not see the regions seeing it as important currently. So we're looking to foot that course for our members currently, to really assist them in getting to and from their place of employment. Because we represent so many nursing personnel, it will be a Herculean task trying to do it across Trinidad and Tobago. So we are seeing how best we could partner with the private organizations to get that done.
What message do you have for your fellow colleagues, and what message do you have for the national community, Mr. Stewart?
What? Sorry, I missed the last. What measures?
Message.
Yeah. Well, simple: vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. I think that's the main thing right now. I think that's the main focus everyone should be gearing towards, so we could, as I said, as everyone has been saying, return to some sense of normalcy and use the lessons that have been learned over this pandemic period to improve our healthcare going forward, our personal health and also our nation's health. So vaccinate and let's improve. Let's learn from the lessons we obtained during these 13, 14 months of this pandemic. Yeah.
Mr. Stewart, Mr. John, sorry. How you see the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Council going forward in this new normal?
I mean, most definitely, consultations have driven the Youth Council. There's a lot of conversation as it relates to meeting with the Minister of Education, ideally having proper representation for young people. You know, and those conversations must continue no matter if it's a pandemic or not. Ideally, one of the things that the council is focusing on is that representation at the level of secondary schools, as it relates to the government, and also as it relates to the local school boards within secondary schools. That is something that we are focusing on, and definitely we would engage of education with. And also in terms of youth representation, the ministry has highlighted that they are going to open 3 new centers for young people who are interested in vocational skills. That is something that we definitely want to see come on stream, and it's now in the making, and definitely the youth council would be in consultation with the ministry to ensure that it reaches the youth that need to be reached. I mean, those young people that have, the system has failed, right? Not necessarily they failed the system, but the system has failed, and now the other means is for them to go through the system of vocational skill. So that is something that the council will be focusing on, and in all ensuring that all youth organizations, youth organizations have challenges of setting up bank accounts, registering their business, so that registering their organization so that they can get some grants to do different activities. The council, the Trinidad Youth Council rather, is also there to assist those youth organizations, and definitely for those viewing, the Trinidad Youth Council has also been involved in regional and also Commonwealth affairs, and we have been advocated at that level, and the Youth Council essentially in these challenging times for young people that are looking to do something else rather than school. We are just there to, enlighten and ignite young persons' careers who are interested in advocacy, policy, politics. We are there, to fill that gap and also be that bridge within the youth space and the youth sector for young people. So, the Youth Council during this challenging time of the pandemic would definitely continue to do the work that it has been doing for a very long time. Thank
you. Mr. Bruce, we are almost out of time. We have one extra time. Mr. Bruce, can you be in closing? Can you give us what is your message for your community youth council going forward in this new normal?
My message, not particularly for the youth council, but for the youths within the Point Fortin area, is to be responsible, be a brother's keeper, get your vaccine when it's available to you, because all of this we need to do in moving forward. Most especially keep God at the head of it all, because during this uncertain time or this new time, that's mostly important. So in closing, I would just say, be a brother's keeper, and we'll get through this eventually.
Mr. John, your last words?
I mean, it was my pleasure to be here with Mr. Bruce and learning a lot about the medical field. Well, I mean, Mr. Stewart, sorry, with the medical field, and most definitely I'm happy to see my colleague Marquis Bruce from the Point Fortin Council doing his thing as usual, ensuring that the youth in Point Fortin are well represented, and of course, by no means least, Mr. Joseph Alexander. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to voice my concerns. I mean, I am very happy to always voice the concerns of young people. And in the same light as Mr. Stewart said, young people, get vaccinated, protect yourself, wear your mask, sanitize, and most definitely, when there is time that you think your voice needs to be heard, ensure that you speak out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Stewart, you have the closing, the last say.
As my colleague said, I am appreciative of the opportunity to bring the perspective of nursing personnel, and I really would want to encourage my two colleagues, Mr. John and Mr. Bruce, to keep up the good work they are doing in their respective fields. I myself, coming out of a youth council, it really has placed me in a position to continuously lobby on my members' behalf. So it has set the foundation. So I really would want to encourage all youths to be part of something positive, such as youth councils, in whatever sphere they see as important. So I really want to commend them tremendously. And you, Mr. Joseph, for having this program to focus on issues in the southern region. So So that's it for me. From the nurses and midwives throughout Trinidad and Tobago, we really want to thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.
Well, let me thank you all for joining us here on Southside News TV. It has been a very good evening for us, and we wish to ask you to continue to be safe, social distancing, wear your masks, sanitize, and to all viewing public and all questions who were sent in their questions. We could not have dealt with all of them tonight, but we hope to do it in a subsequent program in a fortnight time. Let me thank you all and good night and be safe.